Tonight on NewsWatch, fear of the unknown. New concerns about radiation in Japan. Some say the government is not telling them the truth. Plus, unseen dangers. What threat does radiation pose to the people of Japan and beyond? And aborting the plan. Will Republicans break their pledge to cut off Planned Parenthood to prevent a shutdown? All this and more tonight on NewsWatch. And good evening, everyone. I'm Lee Webb. The death toll from Japan's earthquake and tsunami is now at more than 3,300. But now the focus is on the threat of a nuclear disaster. A third explosion and fire today at an atomic power plant may have damaged one reactor's containment structure. It caused a dangerous leak of radiation. A U.S. military aid crew was exposed when their helicopter passed through a radioactive cloud. Now the country has imposed a no-fly zone over a 20-mile radius around that power plant. CBN News' John Jessup has more on how Japan is dealing with its invisible threat.
Today's fire at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant complex in northeast Japan caused a spike in radiation levels, prompting warnings of radiation readings that could, quote, impact human life. Japan's prime minister acknowledged the possibility of further leakage and warned residents within 20 miles of the plant to stay indoors. 70,000 people have already been evacuated. Some are taking refuge in a nearby city where they're being tested for exposure. This 63-year-old evacuee says nuclear power is the most frightening thing, even more than a tsunami. Even residents in Tokyo, 170 miles away, are worried. This woman, a Japanese translator from Slovakia, brought her children with her to Tokyo. She says, "We had no other choice but to leave. I'm worried about air pollution." This man says even though officials say there's no need to worry because of the scale of the leak and Tokyo's distance from the power plant, I wonder whether they're telling the truth. The crisis in Japan isn't only taking a toll on the victims, but also the country's economy. Japanese stocks nosedived 11% in Tuesday's trading, sending other Asian markets in a tumble as well. This week's losses have sent the Nikkei spiraling downward 20% since the beginning of the year. Damage estimates are now close to $200 billion, and concerns about more aftershocks and the destruction that follows could send that price tag much higher.
Apparently, even after half a day, the fire has not been put out.
But the human toll is harder to measure. Officials believe at least 10,000 people have been killed, and millions have spent days in the cold with little food or water. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, meeting with her Japanese counterpart in Paris today, offered the United States condolence and solidarity.
Japan is always a very generous donor to any disaster anywhere in the world. And today the world comes together to support Japan in its hour of need.
John Jessup, CBN News.
Experts say the amount of radiation released in Japan does not come close to matching the levels from Chernobyl in Ukraine. That disaster killed about 50 people in the original accident and perhaps 4,000 more in later years from disease. But that hasn't lowered the fear factor for millions of Japanese. John Wagi explains that doctors around the world are trying to help calm things down.
As people in northern Japan line up for radiation screening, many say the nuclear fear is greater than killer waves and shaking buildings. This woman says, if they test me, I will be relieved.
People are very scared of radiation because they can't see it.
Professor Bill McBride heads UCLA's Centers for Countermeasures Against Radiation program. He says medical advances in treating radiation victims are showing promise.
We have actually very encouraging kind of data with some of these compounds, which suggests that, we can actually take someone who has been exposed to radiation and treat them.
Symptoms of radiation sickness include nosebleeds, vomiting blood, blistered skin, hair loss, a higher risk of cancer, and genetic mutations that can be passed to the next generation. Oncologists are working on medicines that clean radiation from the blood, as well as agents that stimulate the body's immune system. The combination of earthquakes and a tsunami have caused the radiation fear in Japan, but experts around the world are also concerned about nuclear terrorism. For years, Israel's Home Front Command has held emergency drills to prepare the nation for nuclear, biological, and chemical attack by hostile nations or terrorists.
Certainly, there is the possibility of terrorist incidents with radiation, these kind of nuclear accidents and so on.
While the threats of radiation mount, doctors hope to ease the fears of those affected. And the fears have spread across the Pacific as some stores in Northern California run out of iodine, the most famous radiation treatment.
Definitely heard that it's something that's going to help protect our thyroid from possible radiation. And with the trade winds coming in, that they're, could be up here potentially in 5 to 7 days.
I think it's important for people to realize that radiation exposure is not a death sentence. Even whenever you get into doses of radiation which cause clinical symptoms, I think there's still a lot that we can do.
John Waggy, CBN News.
The deepening nuclear crisis is overshadowing other grim news in Japan tonight. Survivors are in desperate need of basic necessities like food and water. The global community is stepping up and answering the call. Ephraim Graham has that story.
This is what's left of Minamis Senriku, where rescuers scoured through rubble today. Government officials say 10,000 people have not been heard from since the tsunami ravaged the coastal town. Images like these move the people of Riverside, California, Sendai, Japan's sister city. Some will soon be leaving for Japan.
The world is really a very small place, and I think coming together today really shows how sister cities can care about each other and really make an impact in the world.
More than 90 countries are offering assistance, but the magnitude of the crisis is greater than anyone could have ever imagined. Here at Japan's Red Cross Command Center,
the biggest challenge is for our relief operation at this moment is logistics.
Japan's infrastructure is a mess. Roads, bridges, and the rail system are all underwater, so it's nearly impossible to reach some areas. Still, Japanese Christians like Kayoko Sears here in Huntsville, Alabama say the chaos is an opportunity to reach people with the gospel. Japan is less than 1% Christian.
I know physical needs will be met, but the spiritual side also needs to be met. And such a disastrous, event, you need something to hold on to.
Arthur Cry grew up in a missionary family in Japan. He's now planning to return to help plant churches.
A lot of our friends and relatives are saying things like, oh, we're thankful that you're here and not there. But for us, it just makes us want to be there all the more. Because we know the needs there, and we really want to be involved in helping.
Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
David Darg of Operation Blessing is on his way to the city of Sendai, which is near the epicenter of the earthquake. He's taking food and water to the survivors, and we spoke with him on the phone from Japan earlier today.
Supplies have been running out in the quake areas. People have been surviving on the food they had available, and the stores are completely empty now, so there's a lot of need for food and water especially. And so that's going to be a focus of Operation Blessing, just getting food and water up to the affected population. And things have been made much more difficult with the threat of the nuclear fallout. The tension has created sort of a hysteria where people have been hoarding supplies, and that's why the shops have been emptied in Tokyo.
Bill Horn is the president of Operation Blessing. Bill, you've told us that Operation Blessing has not had infrastructure in Japan. How are you able to get food and supplies into that country?
Well, it's challengingly. Usually we just go to the store and buy it. In a country where there's a disaster that's localized, usually you can go to the other end of the country and buy all the food you want. We found that not to be the case in Japan, the way that David was just describing. Because of the threat of the radioactivity, the Japanese people are hunkered down. They're hoarding. They go to the stores, clean them out, and their government's telling them stay indoors, so that's what they're doing.
Thankfully, no looting is going on, we understand, at this point.
No, absolutely not. And I think they're well known for their law and order there in Japan. They're very, very sophisticated culture. We don't expect anything like that to happen.
So what's your biggest challenge? How will you get that food and water on land there and ready to go out to the people?
Well, we're still hopeful that we can buy it in the other areas of Japan. We've got people out right now shopping, buying all the food and water they can buy so that we can truck it into these areas hardest hit. if that fails, it's going to be a logistic nightmare, Lee. I mean, it's a long way from here to there, as you know, and then once you get there, you've got all the customs and all that to go through. So we don't quite have it figured out yet. But in the meantime, we're walking into the stores, buying all that we can, and trucking it up to the people that need it.
Bill, let's talk about David Darg. I mean, what motivates a young man like this to go to Haiti after the earthquake down there and to go to Japan? And I mentioned he is in Sendai, which is the epicenter, not far from this nuclear reactor that's now emitting radiation. This is a young man who's putting himself in harm's way. What's the motivation to do what you all do?
Well, David is, of course, he's really one of our very, very top guys. Educated at Oxford, he's an Oxford scholar, got his divinity degree there. He's a very talented journalist, videographer. He's a great writer, and a humanitarian extraordinaire who loves the Lord and is just an absolute delight to be around. Everyone loves David, but he's a man that gets the job done. I mean, I have absolute confidence in David in Japan. He will figure this thing out, and we'll support him from here. It may take him a day or two, but we'll get the job done, Lee.
The Apostle Paul told us to be imitators of God and live a life of love, and that's exactly what David is doing. Bill, we congratulate you on the fine work that your organization is doing.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us. We'll be right back.
If you're an individual, group, or business needing a dental plan, Avia Dental offers group plans for as little as $5 per month. Now members of your group can save up to 50% or more off a high-quality dental care. Everyone qualifies, and there's no waiting or limits on visits to the dentist. Visit aviadental.com or call 1-888-431-CARE. Avia Dental since 1994. Smile, you're with people who care.
How will you survive this recession? What if you lose your job, your income? The answers are in this new book, Survivor's Guide to a Recession 50 States. It outlines free assistance you can get now that will reveal unique ways to make additional income, outline ways to save more money, uncover amazing resources for finding free food and clothing, locate incredible discounts of 75% or more, good in all 50 states, and now only $14.95. Get yours today while supplies last. Survivor's Guide to a Recession 50 States.
Attention investors, now is the time to protect your retirement accounts and investments. Excessive government spending is devaluing the US dollar and high rates of inflation are coming. Gold has tripled since 2001 and some experts predict the prices will climb another 100%. Buy gold now, direct and wholesale with United Gold Group. The demand for gold around the world is higher than ever. Foreign countries like China and India are buying up gold at record rates. Why? What do they know that you don't?
Call now and get your Gold Investors Kit absolutely free. Call in the next 5 minutes and receive The Secret to Owning Gold in Your Retirement Account, also absolutely free. Just call 1-800-758-5070. That's 1-800-758-5070.
This could be the most important call you make this year. United Gold Group, investing in America's future.
Muammar Gaddafi's forces have pushed rebels in his country even further back. The Libyan leader's soldiers reached the outskirts of Ajabaya, where his warplanes are targeting fuel depots. Residents say their families are running for their lives. The rebels are trying to oust Gaddafi from power, but in recent days, Gaddafi's air force has helped him retake much of the ground he lost early in the fighting. Saudi troops have moved into Bahrain. That country's capital is in a state of lockdown. Gulf allies are sending more than 1,000 troops into the region in an attempt to stop anti-government protest. They're concerned that the Bahraini unrest could spill over into their countries and lead to similar protests. Bahraini opposition groups condemn the move. They call it an occupation and say that it pushes Bahrain towards, quote, undeclared war. Israel says it intercepted a ship carrying a large number of weapons heading to the Gaza Strip. Iran and Syria reportedly tried to send the weapons to Palestinian militants. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered the takeover last night based on intelligence reports. Officials seized 3 containers of weapons. Israel has maintained a naval blockade of Gaza since Hamas seized power nearly 4 years ago. There is still no long-term solution for the budget fight going on in Washington. But today, the House voted on another short-term fix. The House passed the measure 271 to 158. This current short-term budget cuts $6 billion from the government spending and keeps things running for another 3 weeks while lawmakers try to hammer out a long-term agreement. Many conservative members, though, voted against the measure because it did not include a ban on federal funding for Planned Parenthood. That places pressure now on House Speaker John Boehner going into today's vote.
Listen, I understand some of our members want to do more. But what is it in this bill they disagree with? Nothing. Nothing.
Some Tea Party members were opposed, though, too. The national coordinator for the Tea Party Patriots issued a statement saying this is a weak incrementalism in a time when we need bold and visionary leadership from Congress and the president. He added, kicking the can down the road will not do. A long list of social conservative groups have been pressuring the Republican leadership to keep funding for Planned Parenthood off the table, but President Obama has said the budget is not the place to promote political or ideological ideas. A prayer service for standardized tests is drawing criticism for one Baltimore principal. Yale Yan held the event for 2 years for his elementary and middle school students as a way to, quote, come together as one in prayer and ask God to bless our school to pass the test. The Baltimore Sun reports that school officials are investigating the event. They released this statement. While we as a district understand that prayer plays an important role for many in our school communities, it is not appropriate for public institutions of education to promote any particular religious practice. But some parents and even the head of the Principals Union in Baltimore are defending Yan. Up next, judges benched. Residents of one state use the election booth to remove judges who make unpopular decisions.
CBNNews.com. News you want, when you want, 24/7. Stay current with up-to-the-minute stories.
David Brody, CBN News, Capitol Hill.
I don't have to wait for my news anymore.
CBNNews.com, at your fingertips all day long.
I only watch the stories I want to see.
I find the story, I click on it, and boom, I'm there.
I'm Chris Mitchell, reporting from Jerusalem.
The source for your news, CBNNews.com.
The doctor said to me, Peggy, you don't understand. Pancreatic cancer is inoperable and incurable. And he says, well, Peggy, you've got 2 months to live. It was like he was telling me, go to the store. There was no compassion. Yeah, it was heartbreaking. My life was an hourglass. I was home, laying on the couch, just dying. My sister Pam called the Cancer Treatment Centers of America. When I got there, I knew that I was going to be cared for. I met with the doctor after the tests were done and said, how long do I have? And he looked at me and he said, Peggy, we did a lot of tests on you, and I never saw one thing stamped on the bottom of your foot that said you were going to die in 2 months. You have no expiration date. I thought, wow.
Cancer Treatment Centers of America is unlike any other cancer hospital, full of hope, committed to your fight. We use every weapon: surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, nutrition, spiritual support, and mind-body medicine. We surround you with a real team, working together, all under one roof.
Each time I went back to the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, I responded better. My tumors were shrinking. Came back in September again, and they still couldn't see anything. I said, you're kidding me. We'll see how it goes. We'll keep testing, but we can't see the tumors anymore.
Please call the number on your screen to speak with an oncology information specialist and receive a life-changing information kit and DVD packed with valuable information. Call now and learn about treatment options you may not even know exist.
It's really unbelievable how one doctor can tell me I have 2 months to live. And then I go to the Cancer Treatment Centers of America and they saved my life. Hope is a mainstay. Hope is everything.
Don't give up. Your fight is our fight. Call Cancer Treatment Centers of America today.
Gay activists are targeting yet another Christian ministry's iPhone app. You may remember Apple decided to pull the Manhattan Declaration iPhone app several months ago. That after pressure from gay activist groups. Critics had called the declaration anti-gay because it defends traditional marriage. Now, Change.org is targeting the iPhone app of Exodus International. It's a Christian ministry that helps people struggling with homosexuality. Jeff Buchanan from Exodus International says that his group just wants the chance to share their message and be equally represented.
A lot of those people have been fed misinformation about our organization and who we are, and I really believe that they don't really have a full understanding about Exodus and what we represent. And of course, every one of those allegations and every one of those statements are not true. We love those who struggle with same-sex attractions or who are gay, and we're simply wanting to communicate the message of Jesus and the message of Christ to them and help the church to become equipped in order to know how to redemptively respond to this issue.
The gay activist group, though, says the ministry's message is hateful and bigoted. A Little Watch contest in Iowa last November may change the way America views its courts. Iowans voted 3 of their Supreme Court justices off the bench, and analysts say they did it because those judges legalized gay marriage. Now the question is whether activists in other states will follow suit. Heather Sells has that story in tonight's Focus Report.
What he joined together, no one should put us under.
Conservative activist Bob Vanderplaats led the campaign that removed 3 Iowa Supreme Court justices. Now he's firing up the base for next year's presidential caucuses and reminding voters of their judicial victory.
They gave us the retention vote for the people to hold a court in check if they saw necessary. The retention vote wasn't just to be a "that-a-boy, you're doing a good job, just keep going."
The vote has sparked nationwide debate over when voters should take judges off the bench and the balance between judicial independence and accountability to voters. But one area of total agreement, it was a historic vote. Only once before in California have voters removed multiple Supreme Court justices. Iowa's decision also marked a turning point in campaign finance. From 2000 to 2009, just $2.2 million was spent nationwide on retention elections. In 2010 alone, that number grew to $4.6 million, including close to $1 million in Iowa.
Judges are supposed to be accountable to the law and the Constitution, not to special interest groups, not to political forces.
When Iowans took 3 of their justices off the bench, it caught the attention of conservative activists around the country. Now many are wondering if they might begin to harness this newfound power to take other justices off the bench.
I think there's a lot of concern among observers that there will be more and more politics, more and more money pouring into states that have tried to insulate their selection of judges from politics and money by using retention elections.
Iowa's Chief Justice Mark Cady fears that judges may have to hit the campaign trail just to keep their job.
The more long-term worry and concern is that if retention elections are going to be transformed into political campaigns.
Cady says voters politicize the judiciary if they punish judges for a single ruling, like the one to legalize gay marriage. But conservatives say the judges were out of bounds, legislating from the bench.
I would say they politicize the courts. We just operate with the vehicle that we had available to us.
New Republican House Speaker Craig Paulson says the retention vote reflected overall dissatisfaction with government. In Iowa, voters not only rejected 3 justices, they said goodbye to their governor and turned the House over to the GOP.
All 3 branches of government the electorate addressed in this last election cycle. And you know what? We're still functioning. We're moving forward. The state's going to end up stronger. That's the way the system was designed, and it's working.
In next year's general election, Iowans will decide whether to retain another justice involved in the ruling. In the meantime, there is pressure for a marriage amendment bill, which would give voters the final say. And with evangelical conservatives expected to dominate the caucuses, many presidential candidates may be forced to weigh in on the debate as well.
They're definitely interested in this. It's the perhaps overriding issue for them.
In 1996, U.S. Chief Justice William Rehnquist described judicial independence as one of the crown jewels of our system of government. What's at stake in Iowa, and perhaps other states, is how and when our judges become accountable to the people they serve. Reporting in Des Moines, Heather Sells, CBN News.
Up next, auctioning a mixed bag. Luggage left behind is now up for grabs at a Florida airport.
The doctor said to me, Peggy, you don't understand. Pancreatic cancer is inoperable and incurable. And he says, well, Peggy, you've got 2 months to live. It was like he was telling me, go to the store. There was no compassion. Yeah, it was heartbreaking. My life was an hourglass. I was home, laying on the couch, just dying. My sister Pam called the Cancer Treatment Centers of America. When I got there, I knew that I was going to be cared for. I met with the doctor after the tests were done and said, how long do I have? And he looked at me and he said, Peggy, we did a lot of tests on you, and I never saw one thing stamped on the bottom of your foot that said you were going to die in 2 months. You have no expiration date. I thought, wow.
Cancer Treatment Centers of America is unlike any other cancer hospital, full of hope, committed to your fight. We use every weapon: surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, nutrition, spiritual support, and mind-body medicine. We surround you with a real team, working together, all under one roof.
Each time I went back to the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, I responded better. My tumors were shrinking. Came back in September again, and they still couldn't see anything. I said, you're kidding me. We'll see how it goes. We'll keep testing, but we can't see the tumors anymore.
Please call the number on your screen to speak with an oncology information specialist and receive a life-changing information kit and DVD packed with valuable information. Call now and learn about treatment options you may not even know exist.
It's really unbelievable how one doctor can tell me I have 2 months to live. And then I go to the Cancer Treatment Centers of America and they saved my life. Hope is a mainstay. Hope is everything.
Don't give up. Your fight is our fight. Call Cancer Treatment Centers of America today.
It's hard to believe, but some air travelers never pick up their belongings once they arrive at their destination. So what happens to all that unclaimed luggage? Well, one airport is auctioning them off to the highest bidder. At Miami International Airport, passengers leave behind a lot of things, from laptops and cameras to bicycles, and even some interesting artwork. The airport is holding an auction to get rid of the thousands of things just left behind.
It's like buying a lotto ticket. You hope you win something. 8 years ago, the guy bought a suitcase, and we don't let him open, but he took it outside, and then he came back in and come up to the roster where I was auctioning. He says, you won't believe what's in this suitcase. It was $10,000.
Wow. Buyers will bid blindly, not knowing exactly what they will find inside of that luggage. That's all for this edition of NewsWatch. For continuing coverage of the disaster in Japan and to find out how you can help Operation Blessing in their relief effort, go to our website at cbnnews.com. And remember, you can email us your comments and questions. We hope you'll join us next time. Good night.